Simulation recipes are a fun way to try new looks and styles and give new life to your old camera. But once you find the perfect simulation recipe, then what? How do you apply it to your camera? How do you create your own simulations? If you're wondering how to modify the settings in the camera, including custom white balance, dynamic range, highlights, and shadows, then this video is for you. Hi everybody, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Jorge. On this channel we talk about photography and filmmaking. We merge creativity and productivity to live a fulfilling life. And in today's video we're talking about simulation recipes, how to create your own and how to apply it to your camera as well. I've mentioned this before, but there are entire websites and forums dedicated to helping people with simulation recipes. And as you can see, these recipes are classified by the types of sensors of the camera. I personally use the fake classic chrome recipe with the X-Pro1 quite a bit. This one was created and shared by the Fuji Weekly website. But there are many sites, blogs, and options out there, including Instagram accounts like the X100p account. Really cool stuff. I highly recommend you check it out. Links in the description down below. We'll be going over custom simulation profiles mainly, but also how to set up your camera and do a step-by-step guide as well. Let's get started. Simulation recipes are a way to expand your experiences with your camera, to test other color profiles and tones, and to shoot with intentionality as well, since these recipes and simulations only apply to your JPEG files. I never use the RAW files, I always end up using the JPEGs only. I try to get as much as I can in camera, and if you want to hear more about that street photography philosophy and how I shoot and how I operate, then you can watch this video, link in the description down below. Simulation recipes look a little something like this. This is the fake classic chrome recipe from the Fuji Weekly site. These are generally created with a specific sensor in mind, to be able to replicate colors and range of tones of film, for example. These recipes start from a base simulation and then sculpt the desired look from there. In this case, the base simulation is the Pro Negative standard. In theory, all you have to do is save these settings in a custom profile on your camera. However, some of these settings are limited or not so easy to find, at least with older cameras like the X-Pro1, so we need to dig a little bit deeper and talk about these settings. Before we proceed, if you don't know how to set up your camera or create custom profiles, then I have a full guide for the X-Pro1, talking about the setup, settings for street photography, and the custom profiles as well, linked in the description down below. The reason why we're starting with the white balance shift is because number one is one of the most frequently asked questions in my videos, at least regarding settings, and number two because the white balance shift on this camera affects all the simulations, including your custom ones. And this is one of those things that sound very simple, a simple setting to change on the camera. However, it gets a bit more complicated than that. Let me show you what I mean. If you go to your shooting menu, page number 2, you'll see the white balance option. When you open that, you'll have a list of options to choose from: auto, custom, a specific color temperature, etc. However, only one of these options allows you to change the white balance shift, which is needed to completely match the simulation recipes that you'll find online. The white balance shift on the fake classic chrome that I mentioned before is set to 0 in the red tones and -1 in the blue tones. So back to the white balance settings inside the camera. Make sure to hover on top of the auto setting and then press the right D-pad. That will open the white balance shift menu. From here, use the D-pad to match the red and blue tones to your recipe. In this case, red is 0 and blue is -1. Hit OK to set it, and that's it. These are general camera changes and settings, meaning they apply to all the simulations including your custom ones. So if you have 3, 5, or 7 custom profiles and they all have different white balances, then you're gonna have to manually change the white balance every single time you change to another custom simulation. And that is because your custom menu and your custom profiles have a white balance menu, but not a white balance shift menu. Let me show you what I mean. Go to your shooting menu, page number 3. Here you can edit and save your custom settings or custom profiles. I'm gonna scroll down and choose an empty one. Profile number 7, for example. Here we have a variety of options that can be changed and saved for that particular profile. If you're looking for a full breakdown of everything in here, then watch my X-Pro1 full guide video, linked down below. inside the custom profile we do have a white balance menu. However, as you can see, the auto option does not let you adjust the white balance shift. There's no indicator to the right side of the auto setting, and pressing the right D-pad does nothing at all. So whatever white balance shift you have set on the general shooting menu will affect all the built-in camera profiles and even the custom ones as well. So leave this one in auto. The X-Pro1 is a decade old, so these are just limitations that we have to work around. I'm sure newer cameras are different and are better in this regard. However, this is something really important that we needed to discuss, at least if you're using this camera. Now you know. Moving on. Another key setting that we have to work around besides the white balance is going to be the dynamic range. This might be specific to the X-Pro1. I don't own the X-Pro2 or the X-Pro3. If you do, please check that and let me know in the comments down below. Going back to our recipe, it wants us to set our dynamic range to 200%, but in this camera the dynamic range is linked to the ISO values. Back to our custom profile number 7, our ISO is at the lowest possible setting, 100 ISO. If we scroll down to the dynamic range option, we can see that the 200% and the 400% settings are grayed out, unavailable. So let's play with the settings here to figure out what's going on. At ISO 200, 100% dynamic range is the only option available. At 250 ISO, the same thing. At 320 ISO, the same thing. At 400 ISO, now we have the option to select 200% dynamic range, but not 400%. You would have to keep pumping the ISO all the way to 800 to be able to select 400% on the dynamic range option. And again, just like the white balance shift, it does sound very simple. However, it does have implications that we need to consider and we need to think about. Let's say you're shooting on a very sunny day, and let's say that you normally set your ISO to 100 on a very sunny day. Well, now you have to bump your ISO to 400 to be able to match the dynamic range of the simulation profile or the custom profile. And that really might affect how you shoot, if you need to stop down quite a bit on the lens or if you need to buy an ND filter. Especially with a camera like this, where your shutter speed maxes out at 1/4000 of a second. I know the X-Pro2 and the X-Pro3 go to 1/8000 of a second, and that's nice, but I'm shooting with this camera, so keep that in mind. Fortunately, both the dynamic range and the ISO can be set inside the custom profile menu, and unlike the white balance, it can be saved individually as well, so that's great. So now that we explained those two major settings and we got them out of the way, we can continue creating our profiles, our custom profiles, and just keep progressing and adding the rest of the settings. Back to our custom profile number 7. We are going to change our base simulation to the Pro Negative standard. Next, we set our color to +1. Next, we set our sharpness to +1 as well. Next, the highlight tone. We're going to set it to +1 or medium hard, the same thing. Next, the shadow tone. We're going to set it to +1 or medium hard, the same thing. And last but not least, noise reduction to -2. And once we have finished changing the settings that we want, we're going to press the back button and it will ask us if we want to save the settings we have selected. Press OK, and that's it. We are good to go. And that is it. You can quickly switch between custom profiles using the Q button and just scrolling down. However, keep that in mind, remember what I told you before, if all of your custom profiles have different white balances, then you have to manually go into the white balance menu and change the shift every single time. Keep that in mind. Once again, credit where credit is due. Head down to the Fuji Weekly website to see this and many other simulation recipes and find the one you like the best. Also make sure you head down to the X100p Instagram account. I highly recommend it, go check it out. The last thing I would like to share with you today is my own custom black and white film recipe or film simulation, specifically for the X-Pro1 or the first X-Trans sensors. I call it the Dark Knight. I say my own custom recipes, but the options with the X-Pro1 are so limited that I'm sure at some point somebody else had the same idea and maybe even shared it on the internet as well. But regardless, these are the settings that I'm using to try to get as close as possible to the Acros film simulation from the newer Fujifilm cameras. And you can find this recipe on my website, linked down below. The ISO is variable, but I try to keep it at 100 on really sunny days. The dynamic range is set to 100%, that gives you an extra bit of contrast in the image. The base film simulation is monochrome. The white balance is set to auto. The color setting does not apply here, this is a black and white profile. Sharpness is set to -1. Highlight tone is set to +2 or hard. Shadow tone is set to +2 or hard. And noise reduction is set to -2. This basically creates a small S-curve in camera, creating a pleasing looking contrast and keeping the image very clean as well. That is the only black and white profile I have on my X-Pro1, and all those images I just showed you were shot with that profile as well. As I mentioned before, the simulation recipe and everything and all the samples will be on my website, link down below. So that's how you apply custom simulation recipes to your camera as a custom profile. Now that you know, you can take the time to explore all these sites and try to find the best simulation that works for you or the one you like the best, or even try to experiment and create your own simulation, do some testing, and try to match it to some of your favorite tones and films out there as well. As always, I'm curious to know, what do you think? What are your favorite film simulations and what are your favorite custom recipes and custom simulations? Share your thoughts in a comment down below. But that is it for today's video. If you found this video helpful or valuable, please like and subscribe, follow me on Instagram, and join my free newsletter as well. Thank you very much for watching, for giving me your time and your energy, and good luck with your creative process.